Our recent comedy film, Heartbroken, needed quite a few special effects. We'll be seeing how they were made, but first let's have a look at the finished product.
I'm Gumbo Safari Lodge.
Good morning. Could you tell me if Sir Roger Wilbert has returned from his expedition?
He's just arrived. I'll put him on. Sir Roger?
Thank you. Yes?
Ah, Sir Roger, this is Hobson, calling from the Manor. We have been endeavouring to contact you for several days, sir. I fear that I have some bad news to impart. Ebony is dead.
Ebony? Dead? He was as fit as a fiddle when I left. Good God, man, he's just won the best in breed at Crufts for the 3rd year running. And now you're telling me he's dead? What the hell happened?
According to the veterinarian, sir, he'd eaten some rotten meat.
Rotten meat? How in God's name did he get that?
From King's Charger, sir. Or more precisely, from King Charger's right hind leg. I regret, sir, that your horse is dead also.
King's Charger? You're telling me now that the favourite for this year's Derby is dead as well?
Sadly, sir, that is indeed the case, and we did not discover his remains for some considerable time. Most regrettable, sir.
So, how exactly did the horse come to die?
In the fire, sir.
The fire? What fire?
In the stables, sir. It spread from the house, and sadly the fire brigade were quite unable to contain it. It is indeed most unfortunate, sir.
Unfortunate? I think it's bloody unfortunate. How much damage to the house?
I fear, sir, that the manor is now little more than a burnt-out shell.
So how did that happen?
The candle, sir. It set fire to one of the curtains in the library.
Just what were you doing with a candle in the library?
It was for the funeral gathering, sir, for Lady Wilbert. We did try very hard to contact you, sir, but communications proved to be quite impossible, and the family thought it best to proceed with arrangements for the interment. May I express my sincere condolences, sir.
So now you're telling me that my wife is dead too. OK, Hobson. Perhaps you wouldn't mind telling me just how Lady Wilbert came to die.
It was an unfortunate misunderstanding, sir. I thought that I'd heard an intruder in the night. There have been several reported incidents recently, and it was very dark, and I fear that I struck her ladyship upon the cranium with one of your golf clubs, sir. My apologies, sir. It was quite unforgivable of me.
One of my golf clubs? I hope you don't mean my personalised titanium Adams driver. If you damage that man, you are in deep...
Dear Sir Roger, I must reluctantly tender my resignation from my service at the manor, for I have been remiss. As you saw, the plot involved a butler phoning his employer, who had been completely out of contact for several weeks. Not an easy situation to contrive. The answer was to have the butler in a stately home, and the owner just returning to the lodge from a safari. All we needed was a stately home, one that we could later burn down, and a safari lodge. Surprisingly, neither were easily to hand in the Midlands. This meant resorting to virtual sets, and a good deal of special effects. For the safari lodge, I started with a background photograph. It contained some features that would complicate our subsequent work, and it was first tidied up. This was done using Photoshop to remove the unwanted bits. I then had to add the two characters that would be present, the receptionist and the homeowner, using blue screen or chroma key. The receptionist, Jeff Payne, was filmed against a blue screen and then inserted. He needed to be behind the desk, so a garbage mat was used to limit his image to the correct part of the scene. But look, the desk had a polished wood surface, upon which we really needed to see his moving reflection. This was achieved by placing an upside-down copy of the same clip onto another timeline, and adjusting its position to make it look like a reflection. It would have looked wrong, of course, without some distortion to mimic the effect of the raised wood grain. There are several filters in Adobe Premiere, such as Wave, that allow this. By reducing the transparency of the reflection, it looked fairly convincing. The effect is very subtle, but without it, the audience may have sensed that something was wrong, even if they couldn't say just what it was, so weakening the illusion. The stately home background was provided by interior photographs of a Tudor hotel, dressed up with a suit of armour and a stag's head. No movement was needed in the background, so this could also be done using Photoshop. Simple blue-screen keying was then used, along with adjusting size and position, and removing the unwanted edges of the clip, to insert the butler. Our homeowner, Terry Weekly, was simpler to film. The background was a still photograph, and both it and the actor were suitably scaled and keyed together. Unfortunately, the background caused some difficulties with matching the lighting between the actor and background. Sadly, I never got this quite right. The final effects did not convince everyone, but at least we had our actors in the desired settings. The unfortunate homeowner now had to learn about his horse, and in order to add some variety to the scenes, it seemed like a good idea to actually show the audience what had happened. Firstly, the stables. This was just a still shot of a row of stables, enlarged to get rid of the cafe and with a new sign over the door. Next, some flames were added, positioned, and a garbage mat was used to confine them to the windows. Finally, a few birds were added to distract the eye. Now the horse inside the stables. Photoshop was first used to place a photograph of a dead horse into a picture of a burnt-out shed. Smoke was added, from some burning rags filmed against a black background, and positioned in the scene. The canine actor, Molly, who had appeared in a previous video, was filmed on a lawn, with the grass acting as a green screen. With some scaling and repositioning, she was added to the shot. A garbage mat allowed me to put her behind the horse, and one of the distortion keys in Adobe Premiere was used to pull at the horse's flesh, in sync with Molly's biting. The plot also demanded that the homeowner's house be burnt down, not something that anyone would readily agree to me shooting for real, so more special effects were needed. The result was achieved by taking a still photograph of the house and making a few holes in the roof. To add a little reality, foreground shots of swaying shrubs and a fire engine were included. These were to distract the viewer's eyes, hopefully masking the ragged edges of the other effects. To make the house burn, several shots of fires were added, scaled to the right size and placed in line with the roof holes and the windows. Simple luminance keying was used to combine them with the underlying pictures of the building. The scenes of the burnt-out house were done in a very similar way. Photoshop was used to replace the house's roof and replace it with scorched rafters from another picture. Smoke damage was added around the windows. This time shots of smoking rags, filmed at night, were added to the background, again using luminance key. A flock of birds added in the same way provided further distraction for the eye. Having devoted so much time to creating effects, it's tempting to leave them on screen for rather too long. Fine if you're a gifted professional, but for those of us with fewer skills, it's better to let the audience see them for just long enough to register what the scene is meant to be all about, but hopefully not for long enough to spot how it was done.